In the heart of Ogwashi, where red dust danced with the wind and time moved to the rhythm of gossip and generator hums, there stood a barbershop that made people nervous for reasons they couldn't explain. It wasn't the size of the place, a modest single-room building tucked between a dry cleaner and a bedding shop, nor was it the paint, though the walls bore an eerie shade of gray that seemed to absorb the sunlight. No, it was the sign above the door that made people pause. In large, blood-red letters, the board read, beneath the name, nailed crookedly into the wood, was an old, rusty razor blade. The kind barbers used in the 1950s. No one knew how long it had been there, but it never rusted further, never fell. It just hung there sharp as silence. Inside the shop, however, was a different world. White marble floors, a gleaming plasma TV mounted on the wall, chrome mirrors, imported clippers, black leather chairs that looked like thrones. A split-unit AC hummed gently, keeping the room cold even during the fiercest heat wave. But none of that was why the barbershop stayed full. It was because of the man behind the chair. He wasn't just a barber. He was a phenomenon, a tall, brown-skinned man with the jawline of a model and the composure of a priest. Always dressed in a pristine white caftan and gold wristwatch that glittered even in dim light, Mr. Michael moved like a man who had nothing left to prove. And when he cut your hair, you didn't just look good, you looked transformed. Sharp, distinguished, reborn. It was why men came from all over Asaba, Kwale, Benin, even Lagos. Politicians, oil boys, mechanics, lecturers, cultists, pastors, Yahoo boys, they all lined up at dawn just to feel his hands glide over their heads. But for all the fame and customers, there was something else, something darker. A rule. No matter who you were or where you came from, Mr. Michael had one unbreakable rule. No personal clippers. I only use mine. People joked about it at first. Maybe he's just proud. Maybe it's hygiene. But the way he said it, calm, direct, eyes cold, left no room for argument. Even those who dared bring their own clippers were turned away without fuss. No shouting. No drama. Just a soft, final, take it outside. My clippers are anointed. And yet, those who stayed, those who allowed him to cut their hair with his own tools, they all left the shop looking better than they ever had. But days later, sometimes weeks, their lives would begin to fall apart. Jobs vanished. Relationships ended. Accounts emptied. Hope disintegrated. And more often than not, they packed their bags and disappeared back to the village. One by one. Still, every Saturday morning, the shop was full again. New faces, new dreams. Same clippers. And no one, no matter how curious or suspicious, dared question the power behind Mr. Michael's touch. Because in Ogwashi, the truth wasn't just something you uncovered. It was something you survived. Ogwashi wasn't a big town, but it had a big memory. The kind of place where people could trace your family tree back 5 generations and still remember the exact day your grandfather borrowed salt and didn't return it. Everyone knew everyone. And everyone knew Mr. Michael. He wasn't born famous. In fact, the older folks remembered him as Mickey, the skinny boy who swept hair at Baba Sam's old salon near the train station. He had no father, just a quiet mother named Mama Chica who sold roasted maize and ground nuts by the roadside, her wrapper always dusty and her cheeks always wet from smoke and struggle. Michael was a quiet boy, eyes too serious for his age. He barely smiled, never played football, and often sat alone during breaks. But even then, there was something about him, a kind of presence, like a radio tuned to a frequency no one else could hear. Then one day, he vanished. Gone, just like that. No letter, no goodbyes, just rumors. Some said he had traveled to the city. Others whispered he had joined a secret cult. Mama Chica never spoke of it. She just continued roasting her maize like nothing had changed, even though her eyes had gone dull like someone watching the world from behind a dirty window. 3 years later, Michael returned. But he wasn't Mickey anymore. He came back with a brand new Camry, black with golden rims, glass so dark you couldn't see inside. His caftans were clean and expensive. His smile, though rare, was polished like a politician's. And on his wrist sat a gold watch that glittered like judgment. He rented the old shop across from the mosque, renovated it in 2 weeks, and opened Mr. Michael's Touch. From the very first Saturday, the town took notice. Not just because of the way the shop looked air-conditioned, tiled, with jazz music playing softly through hidden speakers, but because of how people looked after coming out, you could see it. The confidence, the transformation. Men walked straighter, smiled wider. Some said their heads felt lighter. Some said they hadn't slept that well in months. Soon, lines started forming before sunrise. People came from far and near. University students trying to impress girls, grooms getting married the next day, political aspirants hoping for a fresh look, Yahoo boys wanting to look clean for their next run. Everybody wanted Michael's touch. But then, the strange stories began. A young man named Kelechi, fresh out of NISC, visited the shop for a trim before a big job interview at an oil company. That evening, he got the call. "You've been selected." He danced till midnight. 3 days later, the company shut down his operations. A week later, Kelechi was back in the village repairing phones in his father's kiosk. Another man, Uncle Felix, a respected lecturer at Delta State Polytechnic, came in for a haircut before attending a conference in Abuja. That week, he was accused of fraud, suspended from his job, and had his car repossessed. Coincidence? Maybe, until it kept happening. Akan, the boutique owner from Igbudu Market, closed his shop the same week he got a haircut, claimed he was tired of chasing vanity. Sunday, the Okada man who won 200-0 from Baba Ijebu lost it all in 2 days after cutting his hair at Michael's. Even Pastor Jude, the fire and brimstone preacher from Zion Tabernacle, was seen weeping in front of his church a week after his clean shave. It was like a curse, but a stylish one, because the cut, flawless. Mr. Michael never rushed. He moved like a surgeon. His hands were steady, deliberate. He never joked, never chatted, just cut his eyes locked on the mirror, his lips barely moving. Sometimes he would hum, a low, unsettling melody that you couldn't quite place, like something ancient. Still, no one stopped coming, because he was that good. Men would rather risk poverty than look average. It was vanity over survival. And Michael? He never flinched. Every day, he opened shop at 7 a.m. sharp. Every evening, he closed at exactly 7:30 p.m. No matter how long the line was, he would stop. If you weren't in the chair by then, try again next week. No begging, no exceptions. He never advertised, never posted on social media. Yet his fame grew like wildfire. It got to a point where even rich men from Warri and Benin booked appointments weeks in advance. People gossiped, asked questions, but Michael never answered. They said he didn't drink, didn't smoke, didn't date. No one had ever seen him in a nightclub, a party, or even buying suya on the street. He went from home to shop, shop to home in silence. And the strangest thing? He never gave money to anyone, not even family. His mother, Mama Chica, still sat under her ragged umbrella near the bus stop, selling corn, wearing the same faded wrapper, cooking with firewood, no generator, no mattress. And when people asked Michael why, he would simply say, "My wealth is not from my bloodline." The words chilled people to their bones. But nobody pressed. Not after what happened to Chuka, the local council worker who joked one day in the shop. Michael, with all this money, your mama still dey roast corn?" Michael paused mid-cut, eyes fixed on the mirror. "Would you like to leave with one ear or none?" Chuka laughed. But he wasn't seen again in town after that week. Some said he relocated. Others said he ran mad. Either way, his story joined the long, growing list of men who walked into Mr. Michael's touch with smiles and left with a curse. If Mr. Michael's barbershop had a shrine, it was his clippers. Silver and gold, long-bodied, old-fashioned, not the flashy wall or Keme brands people bought from Abba or Alaba. His clippers looked handcrafted, ancient. There were strange markings on the sides, etched like tribal designs, though no one recognized them. Some said they were Arabic. Others said they were from Benin bronzes. A few whispered that they weren't markings at all but seals. One thing was clear: the clippers never aged, never broke, never overheated, and never needed cleaning, at least not publicly. Nobody had ever seen Michael plug them into light. They just worked. And they worked too well. But the clippers came with a rule. The only rule: no personal clippers allowed. You could be the governor's son or a visiting ambassador, it didn't matter. If you brought your own tools, you were shown the door. "Take it outside, I don't use anyone's tools. My clippers are anointed." That word anointed stuck in people's minds. Some laughed nervously, others nodded, pretending to understand. But those who had sense, they felt something shift in the air when he said it, like the room held its breath. And he meant it. One time, a cocky young engineer named Ovi came in with his own clipper, a shiny, brand new Andis model fresh from the US. He claimed he'd spent 85 on it, said he didn't want any local germs. Michael glanced at it once. Leave. But I paid for. Michael raised a single finger, not even pointing, just lifting it slowly like a conductor pausing an orchestra. The lights flickered. The air grew heavy. Everyone in the room went silent. Even the TV screen froze, no sound, no motion. Ovi grabbed his clipper and bolted out without saying another word. By evening, he had packed his bags and left town. People said he went back to Sapele to stay with his aunt. Others said he stopped speaking entirely. Either way, he never came back. From that day on, nobody questioned the rule. They obeyed. Because the few who didn't were never the same. There was something else about Michael's process, something most people ignored until it was too late. He kept the hair. All of it. Most barbers brushed it aside, swept it into bins, tossed it into the gutter, or handed it to customers who asked for it. But Michael? No. Once he finished cutting, he would take the hair every strand and gather it carefully into a small black bowl. He'd cover it with a cloth, place it inside a narrow wooden drawer near the mirror, then lock the drawer with a tiny brass key. No one ever saw what he did with it afterward. The drawer was only opened after hours when the shop was locked and silent. But some people swore they saw him. Neighbors said that at midnight, faint candlelight would glow from the back room, that strange shadows would move across the wall, dancing like leaves in the wind. One security guard, an ex-soldier named Kenny, once claimed he heard chanting, soft, like whispers wrapped in smoke. The hair, he told his drinking buddies. That's what he's using. He's not just collecting it, he's feeding something with it. People laughed, called him drunk, but 2 weeks later, Kenny went blind. No illness, no warning. Doctors were confused. His eyes were perfectly healthy, but he couldn't see. Functional blindness, they called it. But in Ogwashi, they called it what it was. A warning. There was a time very early on when Mr. Michael had a shop assistant, a young boy named Tachuku, maybe 17, who swept the floors, mopped the mirrors, ran errands. Everyone liked him, friendly, full of energy. He even claimed he wanted to learn how to cut hair. Then one day, Tochuku made a mistake. He swept the hair into the wrong bin, a small plastic one near the door. Just normal sweeping like you do in any shop, he didn't think it mattered. But Michael noticed. He didn't shout, didn't beat the boy. He simply stared at him for a long time, then said, "Pack your things." Tochuku left that evening. 3 days later, he was found in the bush behind the secondary school barefoot, shirtless, and mumbling in Igbo and Latin. His hands were covered in cuts, and his eyes were red from crying. When his mother came to take him home, he couldn't recognize her. He kept repeating one phrase. The bowl, it was full of teeth. No one ever figured out what that meant. But nobody tried to work in the shop after that. People talked about the clippers the most, but those weren't the only strange things in Michael's arsenal. His combs were made of bone, not plastic bone, smooth, polished, slightly yellow. When asked, he said they were custom made. His barber's cape was always spotless white silk, no stains, no wear. Even after hours of cutting, it looked like it had never been used. His mirror, long and oval with a bronze frame, gave off an odd reflection. Some said you didn't just see yourself, you saw what you could be, or what you feared. And then there were the scissors, old, iron, with curved blades. He rarely used them, but when he did, the snipping sound echoed louder than it should. Everything in the shop felt too perfect, too clean, like a sacred temple dressed up as a beauty parlor. Eventually, the town stopped calling him a barber. They called him a ritualist, a priest, a sorcerer, but never to his face. To his face, he was always Sir, or Oga, or simply Mr. Michael. Because by then, it was obvious. Every haircut was a transaction, a trade. You got beauty, elegance, confidence, a shine that made people notice you, respect you, even desire you. But what did you lose? Some said it was your luck. Others said your star. A few priests from the local prayer ministries said Michael had made a covenant one that fed off ambition and offered wealth in exchange for ruin. And the more hair he collected, the more powerful he became. He wasn't just cutting people's heads, he was harvesting their destiny. And no one knew how to stop him. Because even the strongest men, even those who had heard the stories, would stand in front of that shop, look at the perfect lines on the man coming out, and whisper to themselves, "Just once, I just need to look fresh for this meeting." Then they'd walk in, sit down, and hand over their head to the clippers. By day, Mr. Michael's touch was a barbershop. But by night, long after the customers had gone, after the marble floors were cleaned and the chrome chairs covered the room, became something else entirely. It began when he turned off the lights. Only a faint red glow remained, spilling from beneath the drawer that held the black bowl, the one where he placed all the hair, wrapped gently in cloth like the bones of saints. Then he would lock the door. 3 times. Not once, not twice, 3 times. Each time he turned the key, a low hum would rise from the floor, like the building itself was breathing. And that's when the mirror came alive. The mirror in Mr. Michael's shop was older than the building itself. It had a thick bronze frame carved with spirals, cowrie shells, and something that looked like crying eyes. Most customers only looked at it to admire their new trim. But the mirror wasn't just glass. It was a gate. When night came, its surface shifted, rippled like water disturbed by wind. Within it, faces would appear, blurred, silent, dozens of them. Men who had walked in, smiled, joked, flirted with their phones, and left with something missing. Their reflections remained trapped in that mirror, watching, reaching out. Michael never spoke to them, but he acknowledged them with a nod, like a man greeting old friends at a funeral. Then he would open the drawer. Inside the drawer were 2 things. 1. The black bowl round, carved with chalky symbols. 2. A thick, cracked leather book bound with red thread. The book had no title, no author. Its pages were yellow and rough, each one filled with tiny symbols and ink sketches. Horned creatures, inverted stars, human heads drawn without eyes. Only Michael could read it. And each night, he would sit in front of the mirror, place the bowl on the floor, open the book to a fresh page, and begin to chant. Low, slow, words no human mouth should know. As he chanted, the clippers would rise from the table floating and spin mid-air. The air would grow cold, the mirror would flicker, and the hair in the bowl would catch fire. But there was no smoke, no heat, just a strange blue flame that burned silently, as if devouring shadows. The more the flame burned, the clearer the reflections in the mirror became. You could see them now, the souls of the men whose hair had been sacrificed. They mouthed words, but no sound came. Some looked angry, others looked empty, but all of them stared at Michael, forever caught between reflection and ritual. Michael hadn't always been this powerful. Years ago, when he was still sweeping hair at Baba Sam's rundown shop, he had grown frustrated, poor, invisible. Life was hard, no money, no girls, no future. One night, after being beaten by area boys for owing them $500, he wandered down to the riverbank, ready to drown himself. But the river didn't take him. Instead, something else found him. An old man dressed in black, sitting on a stool by the water. Skin as dark as oil, eyes glowing faintly yellow. He wore no shoes, spoke no words. He simply handed Michael a box. Inside it, the clippers, the mirror, and the book. No instructions, no threats, just one promise. You will never be poor again. And from that night on, everything changed. The power came quickly. The shop, the fame, the confidence, the presence. But with each haircut, with each soul marked through the clippers, Michael gave up something. He couldn't laugh anymore, not from the chest. He couldn't cry, couldn't feel love, couldn't touch his mother without his hands shaking, couldn't go home, couldn't help his bloodline. That was the price. Your wealth is not for your bloodline, the old man had said. You will have everything, but you will give nothing. And so he obeyed. Even when his mother fell sick, coughing blood in her roadside stall, he walked past her like a stranger. Even when his younger cousin came begging for 10-0 to pay wake fees, Michael said nothing, because to help them would be to break the covenant. And if the covenant was broken even for a moment, the Clippers would turn on him. Each ritual required a name. He would write the name in the book full name, spoken aloud before lighting the hair. Ebuka Emmanuel Ume. Felix Duru. Ovi Samson. Each name released a piece of power, energy, favor, an unseen force that flowed from the ruined life back into the shop. One man's pain became another man's perfume. That's why the shop always smelled sweet, like lemon and camphor mixed with something you couldn't name. That sweetness? It was despair, bottled and repurposed as incense. One night, something went wrong. Michael had written the name of a young man Kachi, a tailor from Ibusa, just 22, full of joy, newly engaged. But when he lit the hair, the fire turned green. The mirror cracked slightly, and the clippers fell to the ground with a metallic shriek. From the shadows of the room, something moved, crawling, slow, a shape, no face, just a long skeletal form made of hair. It pulled itself toward the mirror, then toward Michael. He screamed for the first time in years. But then the chanting came not from him, but from the book itself. The pages flipped, a wind rose, the shape hissed and evaporated like smoke under sunlight. When it was over, Michael collapsed. He didn't open the shop for 2 days. People thought he was sick, but the truth was, the spirits were angry. He had tried to take too much. Even darkness has rules. Michael never spoke of that night, but from then on, he became colder, more mechanical. His hands still moved with precision, but there was no warmth, no humanity. He became a barber in body, but a vessel in soul. Every evening, he lit the candles. Every night, he burned the hair. And every morning, new customers came smiling, hopeful, unaware, like sheep walking happily into the arms of a silent butcher. Because in Ogwashi, you could be warned 1,000 times. But if your fade was sharp enough, you'd take the risk. If you looked at it on the surface, Mr. Michael's touch was a gift to Ogwashi. It raised the town's profile. Visitors came with money to spend. Other barbers tried to copy his style, but no one could match the precision, the class, the finish. Yet behind every sharp fade was a slow fall. And no one understood that better than Ibuka. Ibuka had just graduated from Uniben. Smart boy, humble. Came back home to Ogwashi to hustle while looking for a real job. He stayed with his cousin Obina, and every morning, dressed in his only decent shirt and trousers, he walked from compound to compound, dropping his CV. One Friday, Obina came home with a fresh haircut. Lines clean, beard shaped like art. Guy, who barb you? Who else? Mr. Michael. Ibuka hesitated. I hear things. Forget that one, Jer. Just go. You'll feel like a GQ model. I get girls asking for my number now. By Saturday morning, Ibuka was in the queue, nervous, excited. When he entered the shop, the AC kissed his face. Jazz played low in the background. Michael, in his usual white caftan, looked up briefly. Sit. Ibuka offered his cousin's clipper out of respect. Michael didn't touch it. Take it outside. I only use mine. Ibuka blinked. Ah, okay, Seer. Sorry. He dropped the clipper by the door and sat down. What followed was the cleanest haircut of his life. Perfect fade. Angles carved like sculpture. Even his mustache looked intelligent. He smiled at his reflection. He felt like a new man. This is it, he thought. My luck has finally turned. That same evening, he got a text from a company in Abuja. We reviewed your CV. Are you available for an online interview tomorrow? Ibuka screamed with joy. He and Obina celebrated with Suya and Maltina. The next morning, the Wi-Fi failed during the interview. Generator refused to start. The interviewer couldn't hear him. The call dropped. Then his phone got stolen 2 days later, snatched by boys on a motorcycle. 3 days after that, Obina lost money in sports betting and accused Ibuka of bad luck. He threw him out. A week later, Ibuka was sleeping in a broken-down commercial bus near the junction. Mosquitoes tore at his skin. Hunger turned his ribs into bones. His confidence faded faster than the lineup on his head. By the end of the month, he was on a bus back to his village. Nobody remembered him. Not even Mr. Michael. Then there was Chibuzor, the younger brother of Nurse Ngozi at Ogwashi General. Right, funny boy. Just got admission to study engineering. As a treat before school resumed, his sister took him to Michael's. Let's clean you up. Make those university girls fall. Michael barely looked at him. But once Chibuzar sat, he became quiet. His smile faded. The moment the clippers touched his scalp, his pupils dilated. He began sweating, but he didn't say a word. He came out looking sharper than a celebrity. But that night, he woke up screaming, said he couldn't see his reflection, not in the mirror, not in water, not even in his phone. He swore his shadow looked different, taller, like it wasn't following him anymore, it was leading him. Ngozi took him to church. He bit the pastor's ear during deliverance. They tied him with bed sheets and drove him to a prayer camp in Abraka. The university withdrew his admission. Michael never blinked. Soon, people began noticing something strange. All the boys who used to shine, the ones with flash cars, girlfriends, confidence, were going broke. Not gradually, suddenly. The boutique owners closed shop. The hustlers moved back to their hometowns. The Yahoo boys either got arrested or disappeared. But they all had one thing in common. They all had haircuts at Mr. Michael's touch. Even women started noticing. My husband changed after his haircut. My brother lost his job a week later. My son has been mute since the visit. But no one could confront Michael. Because how do you accuse a man of destroying lives with a clipper? How do you explain that after a perfect haircut, your destiny begins to rot? Then came Ijeoma, a bold, young reporter from Delta Sentinel. She heard the whispers and decided to investigate. She spoke with former customers, dug into Michael's background, even bribed a dry cleaner who claimed to have once seen strands of hair sewn into the lining of Michael's caftan. She published a story titled, "The Barber of Broken Men." It went viral locally. For 2 days, Ijeoma was praised. Then, on the third day, she was found wandering barefoot along Ogwashi Express muttering nonsense, one side of her head shaved bald, her hands stained with dye and chalk. She didn't remember her name or the story. The article was pulled offline, and no journalist dared follow up. The only person who ever walked into Michael's shop and walked out untouched was a boy named Seiyi. He had a deep scar across the back of his head from an old accident. When Michael touched him with the clippers, something sparked. Literally, a spark flew, a jolt. Michael pulled his hand back. His lips tightened. "Leave," he whispered. "But I haven't." "Out." Sei didn't argue. He left. Nothing bad happened to him. In fact, Sei got a scholarship to study in Cyprus later that year. Some said the scar had broken the connection, that his blood had already been claimed by another force. Whatever it was, Michael never tried again. By the end of that year, over 60 men had vanished from town. Some to shame, some to madness, some to silence. But the shop remained full, because vanity is louder than warning, because the desire to look fresh is stronger than the fear of the unknown. And Mr. Michael? He just kept cutting, kept smiling that small, unreadable smile, kept collecting. She sat by the roadside every day, beside a crooked table with a rusty coal pot, turning maize over hot charcoal. Her hands were thin, skin wrinkled like old cloth, eyes quiet, the kind that had seen too much and learned to say nothing. Her name was Mama Chica, and she was Mr. Michael's mother. Most people avoided her, not out of hatred, out of fear. You couldn't look into her eyes and still laugh easily. They held a sadness too deep, too permanent, like she'd buried every smile she ever had. But she spoke. Not often, only in whispers, and only when she was sure the wind was listening. "That boy, Michael, that is not my son." She said it without emotion, like someone reading a prayer they'd recited 1,000 times. "My real son died the day those clippers came into my house." Michael wasn't born with gold around his wrist. He was born with red dust in his lungs and hunger in his belly. Mama Chica raised him alone. She washed clothes, sold pepper, fetched water for compounds. Michael helped when he could. He was quiet, obedient. He swept hair at Baba Sam's barbershop after school and sometimes returned home with meat pies instead of coins. He used to tell her, "Mama, one day I'll buy you a house with tiles, AC, generator that won't go off." She would laugh. Not because she didn't believe him, but because he believed it too much. Then came the night he left quietly, without a word, without a bag, just vanished like smoke. She thought he was dead. For 3 years, she heard nothing. No letter, no call. Then one evening, while roasting maize under a rainy sky, she saw a black Camry with gold rims glide down the road. Michael stepped out, but he looked different. Too tall, too clean, his smile too tight, eyes too bright, like something that had been polished too long and had lost its soul. He greeted her like a stranger, gave her 5-0 the last cash she ever received from him, and said, "I'm starting something soon. I'll visit again." He didn't. That night he returned home briefly, said nothing, just entered his old room and locked the door. But Mama Chica couldn't sleep. Something felt off. The air grew cold, the walls felt like they were breathing, and then she heard a soft humming. Not from Michael, from something else in the room. She crept to the door, peeked through the crack. What she saw turned her hair gray before morning. A had no candle, but there was light red and pulsing coming from a bowl on the floor. Michael sat cross-legged. In front of him was the mirror, but it didn't reflect him. It reflected another man, or thing, something tall, smiling with no face. And beside the mirror lay the clippers, glowing, floating, twitching like they were alive. He wasn't cutting hair. He was cutting paper dolls, each with names written across them in charcoal. And as each name was sliced, something screamed not out loud, but inside her ears, like bones breaking in her head. The next morning, she confronted him. "What did you bring into this house?" Michael just smiled. "Mama, don't ask questions you don't want answers to." She grabbed his arm. His skin felt hot, too hot, like iron under sun. "Michael, this is not you. You were never like this." He said nothing, just turned, entered his car, and drove off. From that day, she never saw him again. But she heard about him, about the shop, the rule, the rich customers, the boys going mad, the men going broke. And she knew, that's not my son anymore. One Sunday, a local church girl, Adaora, came to buy corn. She greeted Mama Chica respectfully, made small talk, and mentioned casually, "I'm going to Mr. Michael's shop next week. I want to look fine for my fiancé." Mama Chica dropped the roasted maize back into the pan. "Don't go there." "Eh?" "Don't go." "But it's just hair." She looked the girl in the eye. "He doesn't cut hair, he cuts fate." Adaora laughed nervously, left. That week, her wedding was canceled. Her fiancé caught her praying naked at midnight, whispering Michael's name. He swore she was possessed. Adaora never married. Mama Chica's stall went empty one Monday. People assumed she was sick. By Friday, her hut was found deserted. The mat was still on the floor. Maize still hung above the fire pit, but she was gone. No footprints, no note. Just a single item left on the table, a piece of white cloth with a small gold tooth stitched into it. People said it was a sign that she had finally confronted the spirit behind her son and been taken. Others believed she had gone willingly, that a mother, no matter how hurt, would still walk into the dark if it meant pulling her child back. But Michael never mentioned her. Not once. It began with a storm. Not rain. A storm. One that rolled in without warning, no clouds, no breeze, just thunder that shook rooftops and made windows rattle like old bones. The sky turned deep orange. The air crackled like fire waiting for a match. And that was when he appeared. A man no one had seen before. He walked barefoot along the tarred road, wrapped in a long black wrapper that dragged behind him like smoke. His skin was dark, not just brown, but polished black, like charcoal carved into shape. His eyes glowed faintly amber, as if they held trapped fire. He said nothing, just kept walking, past shops, past the town square, past the mosque, until he stopped in front of Mr. Michael's Touch. He stood still, watching. The barbershop was full, as usual. Inside, Michael was finishing a cut high-top fade with pencil lines. A man in a senator outfit was smiling in the mirror. But the moment the stranger touched the doorknob, everything died. The TV screen blacked out. The AC stopped. The generator, the one that never failed, went completely silent. Even the clippers froze in midair. Then came the smell. Not of lemon or camphor, but of smoke, wet earth, and blood. Michael slowly turned around. His hands trembled for the first time in 10 years. The stranger entered without a word. The lights flickered as he passed each mirror. Reflections bent and twisted. Customers scrambled. Some fled. Others froze. Michael's voice was a whisper. "You came late," the man replied. "I came when the bowl overflowed." Michael nodded slowly. "Then you know what must happen." "I didn't come for debate." Then he walked to the barber's chair, the throne of wickedness, and sat. The mirror behind him cracked. Michael hesitated. His clippers wouldn't turn on. His hands wouldn't move. "You carry something that does not belong to you," the stranger said. Michael gritted his teeth. "I earned it." "No, you harvested it." Silence. Then the stranger lifted a long, narrow gourd from beneath his wrapper. It pulsed with dull red light. "Return what you stole." What happened next was not visible to the human eye. From the outside, the shop was still. But within it, a war of energy and sound broke out. Mirrors shattered. The clippers screamed like dying birds. The air twisted and folded in on itself. Michael's body rose into the air, eyes glowing, mouth chanting in a forgotten tongue. But the stranger stood grounded, calm, patient, humming something older than language. Each word from Michael caused cracks in the ceiling. Each hum from the stranger sealed them back. Time bent. Reality split. And then, silence. The lights blinked once, then again. And when they stayed on, the shop was empty. No Michael. No stranger. No clippers. Only the razor blade above the sign remained, once rusted, now clean, glowing, faint red. The town woke the next morning to whispers and wild theories. Michael's car was found abandoned by the Riverside driver's door open, keys still in the ignition, engine cold. His house? Empty. Not looted, not broken into. Just clean. Too clean. Like it had been washed from the inside out. His shop remained locked for 3 days. On the 4th day, the door creaked open on its own. Inside, nothing. No mirrors, no chairs, no plasma, just a white bowl in the center of the room, and beside it, a torn page from a book with strange black ink that bled when you looked too long. The shop was sealed by the town council, but people still crossed the road when walking past it, just in case. Where did he go? No one knows where Michael went. Some believe he was dragged to the same mirror world where he trapped others. Some believe the stranger was a reaper, sent by forgotten spirits to restore balance. Some of his former customers tried to rebuild their lives. A few, like Ibuka, never fully recovered. He returned to Ogwashi once, 2 years later. Older, thinner, quieter. He didn't go near the shop, just stood at the other side of the road, staring at the sign that was no longer there. He whispered, "I forgive you." Then he walked away. Others weren't so lucky. Chibuzo, Nurse Ngozi's brother, never spoke again. He lived in a church camp near Asaba, drawing circles in the sand every morning before dawn. Uncle Felix, the lecturer, became a recluse, locked in a small room, muttering equations and drawing lines across his walls all shaped like clippers. The town began to understand something. It wasn't just that Michael had taken their luck. He had cut away parts of their spirit.